And a very warm welcome to you again, Brewmasters. Yes, it is I, the conspicuous Moo. We did get some beta changes this week. Unfortunately, the tank soulbind video took a lot longer than I thought it was going to, so this is a little delayed. My apologies for that. But you know, in this video, I just want to quickly go over the buffs that we got. There are buffs pretty much across the board for Potency, Endurance, Finesse, and the Covenant abilities as well. So we'll go over those briefly. Yeah, well, I guess there's nothing else to do but to get cracking. So we'll start with the Potency conduits now. As you know, at present the Potency conduits are only 2 slots in each soulbind. For Brewmasters, we pretty much want to fill those if possible. Now that does mean that you may have to take soulbind abilities that are less than spectacular, just depending on the soulbind. So you know, that's just another thing to bear in mind, because you know, these slots do have certain soulbind abilities tied to them in many cases. So we'll start with Scalding Brew. Scalding Brew, of course, is pretty much one of our first picks when it comes to potency. And they have buffed it slightly, so it was doing 6% damage at rank 1 and now it's doing 7.5, and it will go up to 18% additional damage at rank 15 to targets affected by Breath of Fire. So yes, always welcome. Additional damage is always welcome. Now, back in the days when we had 3 potency conduits, or at least the options to take those, then we would have taken Walk with the Ox. It's slightly odd that this is a potency conduit in the first place, given that the traditional usage for Walk with the Ox at the moment, you know, actually invoking Nizao, is more of a defensive thing, especially when you get rank 2, because it's starting to pick up your stagger as well. But they have buffed it, so from 20 to 25 at rank 1 goes all the way up to 60% now. It was 48%. So yes, the stomp itself isn't actually that large, so you know, we're not talking about massive increases here, and it's still very much down the pecking order when it comes to potencies. So moving on to endurance conduits, aptly named, as we have to actually put up with them most of the time in our soulbind trees. Celestial Effervescence gets above 15 to 18%. Not very exciting. The main problem is that Celestial Brew is probably the one moment during your rotation where you don't really need additional healing, and your self-healing is underwhelming at best anyway. Could possibly be used in situations where you're taking catastrophic amounts of damage and you're using Celestial Brew in an emergency just to stay alive. But other than that, you know, you're probably going to take Harm Denial instead. Harm Denial has gotten a buff as well. It now starts at 25% and it was 20%. And that will now go up to 60% at rank 15. Fortifying Ingredients is still rubbish for Brewmasters. You know, even taking it from 10 to 12% for a shield, you know, the fact that it's just not designed for us. We have a longer cooldown on our Fortifying Brew. A 12% shield every 3.5 to 4 minutes, when Celestial Brew will do double that inside 30 seconds. It's just a complete waste of a conduit spot. So don't take this, or the Moo will come after you. Grounding Breath still feels a bit PvP-ish to me. Now they have increased the healing from 12% to 15%, and that's very nice. And of course, you know, that will just continue to rank up. I'm just wondering whether or not it stacks with the legendary Escape from Reality. If it does, then that would be rather useful in PvP. That means you'll be pumping out some pretty serious Vivifies, and probably very little cost. Now, everyone's favourite conduits, of course, are the Finesse conduits, the last resort of anybody. Now, Tumbling Technique and Dizzying Tumble are much of a muchness at the moment, you know, it just depends on what you really want to do. I personally prefer Dizzying Tumble if I'm going to be taking a Finesse conduit, and I have sent a query out just about targets being affected by the leg sweep. Does the damage reduction happen after the leg sweep or during it? And it's rather important because it goes from quite useful to considerably less so. In any case, you know, both of these abilities have been buffed slightly, 5 to 6% in the case of Tumbling Technique, and from 5 to 6.3, which is a bit of an odd number, but okay, we'll take a buff where we can get them. Swift Transference has also had a significant upgrade as well. It's probably still my third choice if I had to take 3 Finesse Conduits. What a horrible world that would be. And lingering numbness, which unfortunately still... They forgot to switch the old decimal point over to the right like they did the other week when we had like 380% on it. So that is still not very interesting, unfortunately, and I don't think it really matters how high that gets. That's not going to really affect us much. And finally, on to the ones that we all care about, the Covenant conduits. Now, Strike of Clarity, the Kyrian ability, is the one that stands out here by a considerable amount, because they the multiplier they've times it by 5. They made it considerably larger, so you get a much bigger mastery now whenever you're using your weapons of order. So people are trying this out at the moment, and the general reports are that this is pretty OP, and yeah, I don't think it's going to stay like that. I'd be surprised if it did, but yeah, it's a real whack of mastery now, so rather impressive. But yeah, actually all of these are, to be honest. I mean, if we move on to Bone Marrow Hops, it was already strong. The Necrolord ability, of course, is Bone Dust Brew, and now the base is increased by 40% for the shadow damage and healing, which is extraordinary, and it goes all the way up to 96% at rank 15. So, you know, you're talking about a really powerful conduit, and we have been expecting nerfs to this ability, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. It just will not stop. So yeah, that's great news as well. Imbued Reflections, the Fallen Order Monks are now going to deal a little bit more damage. It was 29%, now 36.3%, and going up to 87% at rank 15. They needed this because of the recent change to Fallen Order. That was an expected nerf to the ability, because it was already broken, and it was broken for a couple of days after they fixed it. But now that it's been brought back into line, it's, you know, it's in the same area of competitiveness as all of the other Covenant abilities, barring, unfortunately, Phaeline Stomp. But if we move on to Way of the Fae, it's also had a minor buff to the additional damage per target, and the maximum has been increased as well from 22 to 27.5%. So that will increase exponentially as well. It's always nice to see Night Fae buffs, because they are still, unfortunately, the weakest Covenant in the set right now. So I guess the takeaway from this is that, you know, we've had a pretty good week, Brewmaster-wise. Pretty much all of our conduits that have ever existed have been buffed up after having been ground down, and but it is much of a muchness. You know, they're all going up by fairly similar amounts. There's no real standout apart from maybe the Strike with Clarity ability from Kyrians. So whatever you were planning on taking, conduit-wise, just continue with that plan. Just know that it's going to be more powerful. And I will be back as soon as we have some more Brewmaster news. But until then, I am the Conspicuous Moo. And a very good afternoon to you.